discussed, that is recommended, like what we have to do or what we not have to do, right? So there are few examples, so let's go through them first. Okay, guys, so I'm going to start again with some point. So I think that should be covered here. Okay. So maybe you will face multiple type of net configuration together on the device. So how those things are going to be configured and how you have to be make sure which net we need to configure, or which type of net configuration is recommended or which is not. So that is my focus for today. Hope my screen is visible to everyone. Okay. Now, so guys, if you remember, we were discussing about PAT configuration, okay, in yesterday class. Okay, guys, so in PAT configuration, we discussed multiple cases, like where we have netted the LAN pool into a single IP address, right? So in single IP, we use the interface, okay, and we use the separate public IP. Okay, after that I used multiple public IP also, right? Multiple public IPs, and in that also we discussed the multiple variations, like we can use the single IP address at a time, or we can use the round robin fundamental, right? So we discussed these things in PAT, but in PAT, if we are going to be configure static NAT as well, so how that is going to be behave, okay, and what we can see the entire output if we have both. We have PAT configuration and as well as we are using the static NAT. So I'm trying to put PAT plus static NAT together, right? So that I'm trying to achieve. So we are going to be use the same configuration, like the network design still remains same. So let me just access that topology so I can explain you. Wait just a minute. I think the device is not up. Just give a minute. The lab is still booting. What's wrong with you? Okay, so we have this lab. Let me start all the notes. So meanwhile, I will just take a screenshot of it so I can explain you the examples. Okay. So we have this network diagram, guys. So I'm trying to be use my configuration of NAT and PAT and static NAT in this network diagram. So if you remember from the last class, okay. So what we did actually, we create NAT pool for these LAN users, right? We create NAT pool for these LAN users, and here we have one public IP, right? And what was the IP? So I was talking about here one IP that is 20.1.11 or 51. Sometimes it was 11 or 51. So you can assume any one of them, right? So that IP we used here. So whenever any user is coming from a LAN network, right? So they must translate into this public IP, right? So we had here single IP and we had multiple IPs. So in the next example, what I'm trying to put, I will configure PAT for these LAN users into the same public IP. And simultaneously, I want to configure static NAT. And this static NAT we are trying to achieve for this server. So that means whenever this user is trying to access any service from my outside network to DMZ, so I will use this IP, or maybe I can use my interface IP at that time, right? So we want to see the scenario, what we can do and what is the best way to configure it, right? So I'm going to configure here right now on this public IP. So first we will configure the PAT. So the PAT configuration remains same. And at the same time, I'm going to configure object network. And what is that object network, guys? So the object network going to be for your host, like it can be any task number 4. So I need to configure for my single host, which is the server, the R3, and the rule is NAT for DMZ is the real interface, if you remember, and then you need to define the mapped interface, right? After that, this is my static, and I will define here the public IP. So for public IP, I need to create here separate task, that is my T1 public. So T1 public have this object IP, object network, and that is T1 public. T1 is the task 1 public, and here I can give a single host IP, which I'm going to be used for both. That object is going to be used for my PAT as well, and that network object I'm going to be used in my static NAT as well, right? So I can use simultaneously, and at that time I will try to initiate traffic from outside as well and from inside as well. So just I'm trying to check here what is my point, why I'm doing that. Let me clear, because you know the configuration of PAT and you know the configuration of static net. So the point is, can we translate, or can we use same public IP to translate for PAT and static NAT together? So I want to achieve that thing. So is that flexibility we are getting on firewall or not? Are you getting my point? So I have two different NAT roles, but I have single IP this time. And what is the IP address? IP address is this. So whenever those LAN user trying to send any traffic to the outside world, right? When those user trying to send any traffic, okay, those user trying to send any traffic to the outside world, so they must translate with this IP, and then firewall must create the entries for them, right? And at the same time, if any user from outside network trying to initiate connection to my DMZ server, so that traffic also going to be translate, or you can say untranslate with this same public IP. So that we are trying to achieve here, okay? Are you getting point, guys, here? Like what is the task and what we are trying to achieve here? Daniel, Kenel, Aulu, Sahir, Shiva, Vicky.
Yes, 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 yes.
So, like those attended the last class or those are cleared with the last class. So, those can understand this thing. But if you are not understanding, just try to understand my point. I will make things more clear in the class, right? Maybe that is new for Vicar, right? Because Vicar is, I think, new in the class. But I will show you how the things are going on. So just the things are same. Like what is PAT? PAT is just to uh, create network translation on the basis of port number. So I have multiple LAN IP, right? I'm using here three hosts. So those are 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. So whenever any LAN user is going to be transmit your data through the firewall, so what I want, every user must translate with this IP. So that means if there is single IP, that means those will create separate entries. Like how the PAT is working, so that means if 10.1 is coming with a random port number, right? Random port number that should be translated into 20.11 and the maybe the port number is same, right? If 10.2 is coming, okay, and the port number is same, so this time 20.11 is coming, but maybe the port number is random this time, right? And if 10.3 is coming, so it's also coming maybe with different port number or maybe with the same port number, so that should also translate into same port number or a different port number. That is depend on the uh, configuration, right? So PAT is going to be translate every LAN user into the same public IP address, but every time firewall give you a port number to make your connection unique. So this port number can be same, like it can be here also 25, or you can say here is 24 and it can be here also 24, because maybe this user also using the same. So that is depend on the type of configuration. If you have seen yesterday we used one term with our configuration, and what was that guys? That was extended, right? So we used that term with our NAT configuration. So whenever you want same port number with public IP in the translation, like if 10.1 is using port number 1024 and that translate into 20.1.1.11 and the port number is also 1024, and similar the other user also using the same port number, but here you have public IP. The public IP is same here and same port number. And for other user also, normally firewall don't create same entry with same port number. They have separate port number for this, like this, okay? But if you want whatever port is using as by the user, you want to keep as same. So on the basis of destination, so this user must transmit data to a separate destination. Like if this is sending data to 20.2, okay, and if this user is sending data to 2.2, so at that time they can use the same port number here also and here also. But with your NAT rule, you need to mention that thing. And what was that? We configured yesterday NAT rule like this, okay? And here we define the entire LAN subnet. LAN subnet was like this, okay? And after that you define the NAT rule here. Inside that you configure the real interface, then you define the mapped interface, and after that you define this is my type of dynamic NAT, okay, and this is my PAT pool. And after that I defined here I'm going to translate into which IP address, that is the public IP, which I mentioned above guys, if you remember, right? T1 pipe P. So T1 pipe P is actually my the public IP where I mentioned 20.1.1.11. Okay, for that. Okay, and now after that I need to define here one word, that is extended, right? So extended means if this source is going to this destination and it can translate into this port number, and other source also going with the same port number but to different destination, then it can use the same port number. So that is the meaning of extended, right? So those are the features you are getting on the firewall. Okay, so this is just an overview of PAT. And similar, we are using the static as well. So static means I want to create one-to-one entries. But in one-to-one entries, I am trying to create here entry for 30.3 to translate into 20.11. So in this 20.11, I want to translate now two type of network. One is my LAN network. One is my LAN network with my patrol, and one is my DMZ network server IP, which is 30.3 to translate into the same IP. To translate into the same IP. So we want to just trying to make this configuration just to verify can we translate multiple net rules into single IP. Okay. So let's do that. Maybe with practical you will get more idea. So I hope my devices are now okay. Devices are up. So I'm starting with the configuration on firewall, and I guess firewall is already configured with IP address and all. Okay. Yeah, firewall have I guess IP addresses. Show interface IP brief. So if you check, we have here IP addresses. Okay. Okay. And we are not looking for any route because all the networks are directly connected to me. If I'm trying to ping my LAN user is like 10.1, so that should be reachable. Yeah. If I try 10.2, it's reachable 10.3. Okay. And even I can try my server, which is 30.3, right? The R3 that is reachable. And even I can try to ping my this client and this PC, that is 20.2 and 20.3. So everyone is reachable to the firewall. So that means routing is not required, and on end users we have already given the IP and gateway. So now just let me check, do we have some net configuration? No. Show run net. Okay. Show run object. Yeah, there is nothing configuration now. Configuration terminal. Okay. So the first thing what we are trying to configure, I'm trying to configure the object network for my public network. So I am giving here task 1 and public. So I can give here single IP. That IP address I'm going to be use 11. So my this interface have 20.10 IP. This interface have 10.10. It have 30.10, right? If you check, all the interfaces have 10 IP, 10.10, 20.10, 30.10. But on this public outside interface, I'm using here 20.11 as my public IP. So that IP can translate my LAN network and even from outside to DMZ. Okay. And after that, now I'm going to create here object network for my LAN. So this is my LAN 1. Okay. LAN 1, that is my inside network, right? And here I'm creating entire subnet, and entire subnet is 10 subnet that we are trying to be translate with my inside is the real IP, real interface where you translate the source. So whenever those IPs are going to be communicate to the outside world, so in that case 10.1 is going to be translated into 20.11. So that means source IP address is going to be translated. So on this inside interface, source is translating, that is real interface. Okay. But at the time of return, always destination is going to be translate according to the flow. So that is going to become your mapped interface. And now define the dynamic. Okay. And pat pool, make sure give the pat pool word with it. Okay. And give the name of your public IP network object, that is T1P. Okay. So I did that. So that means we have created here PAT configuration. So this is PAT configuration. So simultaneously, I want to create static NAT as well. So static NAT, I am going to create here for this DMZ server, which is here R3. Okay, because network object is always created for the source. Okay, and that is for my DMZ1 rule. Okay, and under that DMZ1, I have one host which is my real IP, and for that real IP I want to translate DMZ network as real, outside as mapped, and static also going to be translated into this interface. Sorry, means on this pool, but it will give you this warning message. Why? Because we already configured the PAT with same IP, and with same IP I'm trying to configure static net, but that's possible. Okay, just we are trying to check it, this is going to work or not. So now if you check show net, now we have how many entries here, guys? Check. We have here the first thing, this is AutoNet. What is the meaning of AutoNet? I will explain you at the end of the class. And what is the meaning of section 2? Today we will going to discuss that also. Okay, what is section 2? Okay, so the first rule we have created, that is your DMZ to outside. And okay, if you have noticed, I have not configured DMZ rule first. If I'm going to show you, I created first my this LAN pool, LAN object net rule, where I make the PAT configuration, right? And after that, I created for DMZ. But in my rule, the first number is for DMZ. We will come to this point also. Why? Because in your section 2 NAT configuration, the first thing, this is auto NAT. The automatically it defines the ordering. So ordering is depend on particular criteria. And what is the criteria? I will come on that point also. Okay, but for not now, but we will do that also. Okay, so just going with the flow. So DMZ to outside we did a net rule, and that is translating the source statically into your pool T1P. So we have T1P pool, and that have one IP in which the DMZ network is going to be translate statically. Okay, and the second is your inside to outside, that is shows dynamic, converting LAN1 pool into public pool T1P. So that means this source translate into the same pool, and here dynamic also going to be translate into this one, but this dynamic is dynamic PAT, because we defined here PAT pool, if you remember, right? And now if you are going to check escalate table, escalate table is your net table where entries are exist during the traffic flow. But static net is always available in the table, if you remember, not the dynamic one. If I initiate the traffic from the host, then I will see entries for dynamic pool as well. Okay. So now we did, just let me try to initiate some data. So I will see. So I'm moving on the host. Okay. Putty. So I will initiate for 20.2. 20.2 is here in the diagram. So this is 20.2 the router. So I have enabled here telnet connection. So this user tried to take telnet from R2. Open it and wait a minute. Admin and Cisco. So here we have access of R2. Now I'm going to check on other users as well. Let's create the entry from here also. 20.2. Username admin, password is Cisco. And on third host as well. Wait, I did wrong. Twenty.2. username is admin, password is Cisco. So all the PC have accessed the R2 successfully. So that means if you are trying to check here in table, there must be entries. So you can check this is static entry that remains permanent, right? But if you remember for dynamic will create when traffic will initiate, right? So now we have traffic initiated from 10.1 on this particular port number, which is random. And you can see 20.11 translated to into the same port number, but R2 also using the same port number and R3 also. Normally your firewall is not going to be use the same port number because we configured normal patch, okay, on the IP. And now if you check show con log, so that is connection table where you get the all entries. So these are the entries, right? So entry also explain about the which escalate ID they are using. So they are using this ID. That ID is same, right? Like which table ID is this, and it also have its own id, and this one also have its id, okay. And now that is for internal traffic which we are sending to the outside. But now I want to initiate some traffic from this user to this router. But if you remember, I forgot one thing here. So what I can do, I can try to show you with one command, packet capture, right? Sorry, packet tracer. Packet tracer input, we want to initiate traffic from outside interface. The traffic is TCP based. The traffic is coming from 20.3. This is my PC on a random port number, okay. And the traffic is coming for which IP address? The NATed IP, which is 11 on port number 23. So you can see the traffic is coming. Okay, the first they check the MAC access list, which we are not using. The second, the device check the unnat. Unnat means the traffic is coming on uh, mapped interface and then moving to real interface. So that's why this is unnat, right? And the traffic is diverted to your DMZ interface, and this is your untranslate entry. 20.11 is translating into 30.3 as per the NAT configuration. And after that you can see the traffic is dropped due to some access list. Why? Because we forget to configure access list. If you remember, the traffic is initiated from the lower security level and moving to the higher security level, right? Because outside have 0 security level and DMZ have security level 50. So we need to create here access list so traffic can be forwarded, right? So let's do that. Access list, and we can configure access list for DMZ. That is my role 1, and I can permit TCP traffic coming from any source and moving to my real host, right? If you remember, so I need to configure real host IP and port number is 23. Okay, access group, role 1, direction in, interface is outside. So we are applied this ACL on outside interface in indirection because the traffic is coming from PC to here, right? Okay. So the traffic is coming from here to here. So that's why we applied on the outside interface. So what we permitted here, we permitted anyone can come to my real IP because if you remember the packet flow, firewall always check NAT first and then ACL, right? So ACL is always for real IP because if once you did that untranslation of the traffic, so 20.11 is untranslated into the real IP into 30.1.1.3. So that means now ACL is going to be checked for 30.1.1.3, not for 20.11, right? So that's why we have ACL for real IP, not for netted IP. And now here we applied, and now I can generate the traffic directly. So I'm on host, okay, and here we can do the telnet. That is on 20.11, right? So we have admin and password is Cisco. So see, we have access of R3 here, right? So that means at the same time we have entry for PAT and we have entry for static net as well. So if you check the net table, so net is here. Okay, we need to check the escalate table, guys. Okay, for net. So the traffic is matched actually with this entry because this is permanent entry, right? If you check the count table, you need to check count table and see here we have entry. So the traffic is initiated from outside on this IP with a random port number and moving to DMZ to this real IP, and this is my mapped IP, right? And if you remember about the flag have B. B means traffic is initiated from the lower security level. Okay. So that how we can use the same IP address for both purpose. Guys, for both purpose, right? Both purpose means we can use for static net and we can use for PAT as well. Okay. So I hope this is clear to everyone.
Yes.
Okay. But here I have one question. Even I have not discussed. So let me ask the question first. So you can give me your answers or your opinions, and then we will check the practically. Okay. So the point is here we have created a net rule, and that net rule is translating uh, 20.11 into this host, right? So when this PC is going to hit on this IP address on port number 23, so this IP is going to untranslate into 30.3, right? So let me give you the packet flow. Okay, I need to take capture again. Okay. Okay, just try to understand my thought. So we have created the net role. So the net role is saying if 30.1 is 30.3 going to send data, that should be translated into this IP, right? So that is the actual NAT rule because NAT is configured for real IP. So this is the real IP, but this is static NAT. This is static NAT, right? So static NAT is bidirectional, if you know, right? Bidirectional means traffic can be initiated from any side, from inside or from outside network as well, right? Inside outside means from DMZ, that is like inside network for me by in network, and outside is like public network. Okay, so traffic can be initiated from any of side. Okay, and now I initiated traffic from outside. Okay, so I initiated traffic from outside here. So that means if any user trying to initiate traffic from outside and going to hit on this IP as a destination, so this user is using IP address 20.3. So my source IP address is here, source IP is 20.3, and the user is using destination IP address as 20.11, right? But when traffic is coming on the firewall, so firewall is going to untranslate it. Why I'm using untranslate word here? Any one of you? Untranslate means traffic is hitting on your mapped interface, right? And translate means when traffic is hitting on your real interface. Why? Because NAT is always for real interface, right? So this IP is going to be untranslate into 30.3. Okay, 30.3. So the traffic is coming to this router in that case, right? And even for the traffic flow we created the ACL, and that ACL is giving us permission if anyone is coming for this IP address, that must be allowed, that must be allowed. Are you getting my point? So in this packet flow, just assume by mistake this user hit the real IP instead of the mapped IP, instead the mapped IP. So this time suppose traffic is initiated like this. The user by mistake hit the real IP, so the source IP is 20.3. The destination IP is 30.3. So what will happen with the traffic? Just go with the flow of the firewall and try to understand what will happen. Okay, let me ask you. Suppose this user send that TCP connection on this interface. So whenever traffic is coming on this interface, as we know, firewall first check the connection table, but connection table don't have entry. Then firewall will check the NAT, right? But this is the destination IP, so there should be no NAT. Why? Because this is mapped interface, and if traffic is for this IP, so there should be no translation, right? Because this is directly real IP, not the translated IP. But after that, firewall must check the ACL if there is no NAT, because firewall do route lookup, and route lookup give you idea about exit interface, which is DMZ interface. For DMZ interface there must be some policy. So we have ACL is approving the traffic. Anyone is coming for this destination, that must be allowed, that must be allowed. So according to the concept, traffic must forward it. Are you getting my point? I am saying user is sitting on the real IP instead of the mapped IP on public interface. So firewall must allow this IP because we have ACL as well, right? And as we discussed the flow of the firewall, that should be allowed. That should be allowed, right? Let me try to generate the traffic and let me show you that is going or not, right? So what I'm trying to do, I do the same packet tracer command. Okay. So packet tracer input on which interface? Outside interface. Okay, this should be TCP. The traffic is coming from PC3, okay, on a random port number, and traffic is coming for 30.3 on port number 23, right? The real IP. See, so firewall did the route lookup and find out the next stop is exit interface is DMZ, right? And even we have access list, so traffic is allowed till now, right? But after that, okay, going down, okay, at this step the type is NAT, okay, the subtype is RFP check, and the result is drop. So what is this RFP check now, and why the traffic is dropped? Because if ACL pass the traffic, so after ACL there is nothing who can stop the firewall to forward traffic to DMZ. But still there is something that firewall is going to be check, and that is RPF check. That is RPF check. What is RPF check, guys? Anyone? Okay, RPF is reverse path forwarding. What is reverse path forwarding? Like, this is the full form. So I hope from the full form you are getting the idea. Okay. So I have here one document. If you remember, we discussed about ASP. ASP is accelerated security path, like how firewall is forwarding the traffic. Like we have slow path, management path, and the control path, right? Sorry, management, session management path, control path, and the fast path. So that means firewall maintain the connection table, and accordingly firewall do the fast path. So that means if any traffic is passing through all the criteria like passing the routing table, NAT, ACL, inspection. So after that, firewall maintain here one connection table. Firewall maintain the connection table. So return traffic directly going to check the connection table and pass directly without checking the NAT, ACL, and everything, right? The reverse traffic also, right? So that means firewall is going to be check if any traffic is passing the path, like traffic is passing with routing table, then with your ACL, but in that condition they are not checking the NAT because NAT is not here, right? Why? Because in this way, when traffic is hit by this user to IP30.1.1.3, so there is no NAT in between when traffic is receiving for the user. But now firewall is checking for the reverse as well. So when I will do the reverse path, reverse traffic forwarding to the same user, so at that time is the traffic going through the same method? Same method means the content and the table is still remain same or not? Not this time. Why? Because there is NAT configured for user 30.3 for which IP 20.11. So there is NAT in between for the reverse traffic, and that NAT is not checked for that traffic which is coming for the first time. So that means the path is different. The path is different. So firewall always do the reverse path forwarding just to verify what I'm sending or what path I'm using to forward the traffic. Is it the same path I'm getting back for my traffic? Just give me 2 minutes, guys. Okay. 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 So the concept is, so firewall always check before sending the traffic. So that means the traffic is coming on firewall here. Okay. So the user is sending data to the firewall when user is hitting to the real IP. But before sending to this, firewall make sure when I will receive the traffic, am I using the same fast path or is there any something else? So this time firewall get, okay, there is NAT in between. And when the traffic is coming from the user, that NAT is not checked. NAT is not checked. NAT is bypassed. Why? Because the user is sitting to the real IP. But for the reverse traffic, we have NAT. So NAT is translating the real IP into the netted IP. So that is making your flow different. So if flow is different, so that's why firewall drop this traffic instead of sending to the actual user. Why? Because before sending, firewall always do RPF check. Firewall always do RPF check. Okay. So firewall always do RPF check. So that's why there is RPF check in the flow. And that's why the traffic is dropped. Why? Because during the reverse traffic, firewall checks, okay, when traffic will come from 30.3, that should pass through this net. And once traffic will pass through the net, it will change the IP, right? It will change the IP. Okay. So now if you check in the documents as well, guys, so the thing is same. NAT RPF failed. If you will get this error, okay, during the packet tracer command or your logs, so the NAT reverse path failed. So rejected attempt to connect to translated host using the translated host real IP. So that means the attempt is rejected. Why? The host is using not the translated host IP. The host is using translated host real IP. They are using the real IP actually. Okay. So that is the reason. And if you say when the recommendation, what is the recommendation? So when not on the same interface as the host undergoing net, use the mapped interface instead of the real address to connect to the host. So they are trying to say don't use the real IP. Use the mapped address. The mapped address is here. What is the mapped address? 20.1.1.11 in our case. Okay. And also enable the appropriate inspection command if application enabled IP address. So yeah, that is something else. If you have any inspection or something, you can use that, right? Okay. Okay. So I hope there is no doubt in this. If you have any doubt, please let me know. Anyone? Vikar, Vidya, Vicky, Shiva, Sahir, Kenel, Daniel.
Could you please explain it once again?
Sorry, could you repeat again the question?
Could you please explain the whole process once more
Okay, no
in
problem.
order to pinpoint the reverse path which IPs participate in this reverse path,
Okay,
etc.
let me explain you.
Thank you.
So, so we have here this diagram, right? So with diagram, I'm trying to explain you with packet flow. Okay. So what is the packet flow? We have created here one net role. Before that, let me explain you the net role is. So the net role is object network, and we have created here for DMZ network, in which host 30.1.1.3 is going to be translate. with one IP address that is in outside network, and that is static. So just I'm putting here IP directly because we have created one more object if you remember, right? And that have IP 11. Okay. So that means if 30.3 trying to send data to outside world, it will translate into 20.11. But in our case, the traffic is initiating from the outside network, and the outside network have this user, right? So user is 20.3 trying to send data to directly this IP. So user 20.3 trying to send data to directly to the this IP, to the real IP. So this is my real IP. Okay. So real IP is the first thing not routable on the network, but maybe if they initiate it, okay. So traffic will come to the firewall on this interface gig 0 by 1, right? So the gig 0 by 1, first of all, check the firewall, first thing check the connection table. So there is no entry in the connection table. Firewall check NAT. So there is no NAT for this IP right now. Why? Because NAT is for this IP when traffic initiate from DMZ to outside. But in our case, traffic is initiated from outside world to DMZ. But traffic is directly initiated to real IP. So NAT is not going to be checked. Okay. So firewall is going to check route lookup here. Firewall do routing lookup, right? Routing lookup means where I can reach to this IP or to this network. So it will get you can reach to DMZ for that DMZ interface. Okay, in route lookup, and after route lookup, the firewall is going to check the policy. Why? Because the traffic is coming from lower security level to higher. So that's why we have here ACL already created. So ACL is going to allow you to do that, right? So that means if this is your traffic flow when traffic is initiated by outside user to your DMZ. So according to that, firewall pass everything. There is no problem. Okay. This is traffic when outside to inside. When traffic is outside to DMZ, you can say, right? But if I say the reverse means when traffic will uh, reply from the server to the host back, that is the reverse traffic for me. So how reverse traffic is going on that in that case? So in that case you can say reverse traffic is generate from not generate the transmitted from 3 to 20.3, right? And in that case the traffic is receiving on firewall, so firewall is going to check the first thing connection table, but before connection table it will check the NAT, right? So there is NAT, so that means 30.1.1.3 going to be translate into 11, but the user is looking for 30.3 not for 11. So that means firewall checks during the traffic when coming to the server there is no NAT in the flow, right? But when I'm receiving traffic back from the server and trying to send to the user, there is NAT in between. There is NAT in between. So that is making my flow different. Flow must be same for transmission and for receive, right? If flow is different, I need to drop this traffic. I need to drop this traffic. So before sending the actual data to user, firewall do all this thing by itself, like internally, right? Like firewall analyze this thing by itself before sending the real data. So before sending the actual data, firewall drop itself here because of RPF check, because of RPF check. So that means when traffic initiated by the user and sent to the firewall, so firewall check, I can send this data to router, but I need to check when I will receive the same data back my on DMZ interface here on my DMZ interface. So is it going the same path? This is the same path, you can say. That should be the path, right? But in between, somehow NAT is coming in between. So firewall is receiving data here, but it will drop the data at the same moment. Why? Because firewall analyzed the traffic is not going through the same thing or same path. So that is because of RPF check. That is because of RPF check. But if user is generating traffic for this IP address instead of the real, so at that time NAT should be there and they will pass the traffic, even they will pass the traffic. Now are you getting my points?
Yes, I understand you, but I'm thinking that normally the traffic initiates from outside when someone from the internet wants to access a DMZ server, web server, let's say,
Right.
or telnet server.
Yeah.
So we must change our rules somehow to allow this traffic in order to not be dropped by the RPF check. Do
Yeah,
you
but
agree?
yeah, I agree with that. But for this server, you have created a NAT rule, and according to the NAT rule, those public user must hit on your public IP, not on your private IP. That's what I mean. Because firewall translates that. That means if this user trying to access your services of network, so we have dedicated one IP, that is 20.1.1.11. So this user must access this IP. Automatically that IP translate into 30.3 because I configured the rule. So firewall is saying you pass through the rule, I will allow you. If you try to directly access the real IP, I will not allow you. That is the main reason.
Okay,
Still,
thank you very much.
okay. So are you getting point or still you are confused? Okay, let me show you. So suppose if this user try to hit the real IP directly, so there is NAT rule that will not allow for the reverse traffic. So if I'm using the packet tracer command, see user 20.3 trying to access the real IP. NAT is already there in the in between. So why you are using the real IP? That is the first question. But by mistake, if someone use, the firewall will not allow that thing. Why? Firewall will say when I'm checking back, I have to translate it. Okay, so that's why there should be no entry even in the connection table, right? But if the same user trying to access with the netted IP that is given in the net rule, that time it will allow. So now same user coming to my public IP, and this public IP translate into my real IP. If you check here, see unnet. So firewall unnet this public IP into a private IP that user actually want, trying to access this IP, but user have to hit on my public IP according to my NAT role configuration on firewall, and firewall still allowed with the access list, right? And now you can check NAT rule. RPF check is allowed. Why? RPF check is checking traffic is translated, and now I can again translate through the NAT when traffic will go back to the DMZ to outside. So that is now going according to the NAT rule. So that's why in RPF check, traffic is allowed. Traffic is allowed, right? So the final traffic is allowed in that case. So that is the main reason. So if sometimes you will face RPF check failure during the NAT configuration, so maybe by mistake the user is trying to hit on your real IP, not on the NATed IP. Okay. Okay, everyone. I hope this is clear to everyone. Okay. So we just configured the NAT here with, okay, I need to check here, object network. So I configured NAT with a separate public IP. So this time I'm trying to show you if I'm going to be use interface IP instead of separate IP. If you remember, even I can use my interface IP for translation. Which IP? Which is configured on this interface, and that IP is 20.10, right? So what I want to translate all the IPs and even in this DMZ server into this IP. So that means I want to translate PAT and static NAT in interface. So what can make here problem now that I'm trying to explain you? That is not recommended what I'm trying to do right now, but just I want to try to explain you what is the reason why we should not follow this one. Okay. So now just I'm deleting the previous entry and just trying to configure on the interface. So yeah, we are not using this anymore. So just I need to change into my NAT roles directly. Okay. So I'm moving to this NAT rule, that is LAN rule. Okay. Remove this NAT rule. And now we can configure NAT and just say dynamic and interface. If you use interface also, that is also PAT. Okay. And the second is DMZ. So DMZ have static. So ACL is already configured. Don't forget to configure ACL if you are not using or you are configuring everything from scratch. Here also interface. Okay. But see, there is a message. What is the warning message here, guys? All traffic designed to the IP address of the outside interface is being redirected. What is the meaning of that? I will explain you with an example. Okay. Okay, so what I'm trying to do, I will initiate some traffic first. I will show you the translations. Yeah, there is a static entry this time. So that means 30.3, the DMZ server is going to be translate the IP of interface on this IP, guys. Okay, so we are translating on interface this time. And now I need to move to my, I'm going to take telnet. Okay. So just we can see the traffic is initiated from internal and they are now accessing the devices. Similar on the second host, Windows 2, right? The LAN user 2, you can see. 20.2 admin Cisco. And even I'm trying on the third host. Admin and Cisco. Okay, so everyone is, all the LAN users are eligible to access the server, the R2 that is on outside network, no problem. But I configured NAT, static NAT and PAT on this interface. And suppose I want to enable telnet on this firewall to access from the outside world, right? So how to enable telnet, guys? If you remember, could you tell me? Telnet, anyone from outside, okay? And AAA authentication. Wait a minute. Telnet console. Local must be in capital. Make sure, okay? And we configure telnet outside. Okay, I think these are enough commands to access the device. Now, if I'm trying to access my firewall, if I'm trying to access my firewall from this Windows PC, here it is, okay. So can I access it? So I'm using telnet and the public IP is 20.10. 20.10 is the IP address of this. So maybe in some cases you want to access your firewall from the public IP. Maybe you are on different location, okay? So sometimes we have management purpose from the same public IP, right? So we put this IP for management also, okay? So now I configured static NAT and trying to open this IP admin. So whenever any traffic is hitting on this IP and you have configured the static NAT, so that actually translated into before checking the layer 7 traffic. See, I'm trying to hit on my 20.10 IP, which IP belongs to the firewall outside interface. So just I'm trying to access the telnet connection of this firewall using this IP. But when traffic is hitting on this firewall, firewall check the NAT and firewall translate to this IP and we are getting access of this. So that's why static interface NAT is never recommended. Why? Because that will translate every traffic. Maybe that is for firewall itself, for telnet or SSH. So in both cases, firewall is going to send that traffic to into NAT and send to the next netted device. So this is the main reason. So whenever I'm going to be access this firewall, my request will translate and send to the user. So I will never get access of the firewall through the public IP. So this is never recommended. Okay. So make sure what you need to make sure, guys. Make sure never use static interface NAT, okay, on firewall, because same interface IP address can use for management purpose, right? For management purpose. So you never need to do that.
Could you please show the specific commands that you recommend to not use for
Okay.
interface NAT? Thank you.
So the command is under the object network. Right now we are using only object network, that is type of our net here. But the second is twice net. In that also I will show you. For now you have to not to configure this command net. It can be inside or DMZ, okay, like DMZ and outside. After that static interface. So these two words don't use together. These two. Okay, so that means statically you want to translate on the interface. Which interface? That interface is outside. So outside interface never translates statically any IP. It can be LAN or it can be DMZ. It can be anything. Doesn't matter DMZ or inside. But if you have mapped interfaces outside and you are translating statically on the interface, that is real problem. That is big problem. Okay. So don't use outside interface as mapped and static interface in above command, right? So that is not recommended. So normally on next generation firewall we have other features like NAT is still remains same, but I will give you idea on the next generation firewall also, but that is through GUI. If you talk about the CLI on next generation firewall also, you will get output like this in CLI for troubleshooting purpose, but configuration through the GUI. But same configuration you can do from the GUI as well, but you no need to do that. If you remember this thing, you will not do that configuration through GUI as well. Okay, because you will understand the concept before going to configure it. Okay, so if this is clear, there is something. Okay, now I want to configure static PAT. So this is about static NAT, right? We did on interface. So now I want to do static PAT on interface. There is difference. Static NAT is IP to IP translation, right? And static PAT is IP and port number translation. So I want to do the second task now, but on interface also. So we did here for interface, right? But one to one. And now the next is I'm trying to do same task but with static pat. So what in static pat exactly I'm trying to do? I'm trying to translate a specific service now. Just a specific service, okay? So with same rule which we have already configured on the firewall, I'm going to configure my pat as well. So I will show you static pat is not going to affect your firewall. You will still get the management of the firewall through it, okay? But static net caused the problem. Or you sorry, static pat is the problem, okay? So we have still above configuration on firewall. So just I'm trying to add static pat as well with it. So in static pat, I will do for the same host. And what is the host, guys? 30.3, right? And I'm going to translate now statically on the interface, but with service also. With service also, and service I'm giving like SSH. So I can do that. So that means whenever I'm just trying to access the service, allow me or not, it will allow me or not on firewall. Okay.
No, because this is a telnet server,
Mm-hmm. I
maybe.
will configure SSH on firewall. Don't worry. I will enable SSH on firewall just to check.
Yes, but it will redirect it to the host 30.1.1.3, which doesn't accept, I think, SSH.
Okay. Okay, I will enable two services, TCP port number 80 also, or you can say 443, and SSH also. So we will check for both. Okay. So let me configure the rule, and before that, let me enable the. Just I'm trying to check. Okay. So you will get the best way to configure the net on firewall. So these things still remain on. So just I'm trying to enable SSH configuration. Okay, so RSA must use the default key. AAA authentication, SSH. console local and SSH outside network. And similar, I'm going to enable HTTP. AAA authentication, HTTP console local. Okay. So we have enabled the SSH and HTTP on firewall. And now I'm going to configure the rule here. So the rule is task 7 and host still this one. And I'm going to configure NAT rule DMZ outside. Okay. Static interface service TCP. So I'm doing just entry for SSH. Okay. Not unable to reverse the port. Just a minute. What I did? Yeah, 2020. Wait a minute. Let me verify. Net configuration is not. Wait. What's wrong? Okay, it's TCP service. Hmm. Port number 22. Error net unable to reserve port. Just a minute. Show escalate. Clear escalate. Oh, okay. Okay, it just created entry for port 80. So let me check this will work or not. So just I created for it, but I created a NAT rule as well. So let me try to hit on the. So just I'm trying to put 20.10, right? Or let me access the SSH as well. Mm, I think the code is translated to this host, and host don't have actually HTTP configuration. And even I forget to create the username and password on firewall also. Just a minute. Password Cisco privilege 15. Okay. HTTP server. We enabled it already. And let me enable here also. IP HTTP server. IP HTTP authentication local username is already there. Let me check the connection table also, or escalate table. So if we try to hit from outside on this port number 8080 on this IP, that must be translated into this. Okay. Again, wrong IP. HTTP 20.1.1.10, right? I missed something. Let me check. We enable here SSH and SSH version 2, HTTP server enable, HTTP from outside, okay. And even we did the authentication, right? But I guess we created this entry, that's why the firewall service is not accessing. But we have created static NAT. So let me delete this entry. Just I'm trying to hit and show run object network. So just what I'm trying to show you, the PAT will not affect the firewall actually, okay? But static NAT do. So let me remove this one. Come on. Okay, we should use HTTPS because that is by default HTTPS in firewall. Wait, show escalate. IP, HTTP, secure server. Even the traffic is not translating, so there is no entry. So the traffic is hitting on the firewall, but firewall is not giving HTTP access somehow. Okay, I need to check about that because I was just thinking to send some traffic. So just to show you, the PAT is not going to affect, but static NAT will affect because it will lose your management traffic on firewall. Okay, but if you configure static PAT on the interface, that will not affect anything on firewall. Okay, but even both case, I'm trying to take SSH as well, but this is not working. Okay, let me.
Do you have did you enable SSH inside the line VTY, transport input SSH, etc. on R3 or ASA?
ASA have enabled SSH. ASA don't have line device. If you check, we have enabled here. Let me do the crypto key. Okay. Yeah, SSH is enabled here. See, the everything is allowed here, so the traffic is not coming on R3. Traffic is on R2 itself. But need to check why, because the firewall is virtual. Sometimes it have issue related to management. Even we have allowed everything, so that is need to troubleshoot. If you have simple physical firewall, you will get the access. So if the traffic is not coming on R3, so that means there is no access of R3. So the traffic is only on firewall. Uh, because I changed the firewall few days ago, maybe that's why I have some issue related to management on it. Okay, just the point was about PAT, but that will you can practice on real firewall. You will not show that issue, right? So after that, we have here. Let me talk about some drawback of object network, because till now we are discussing about that, right? So now there are few things. If you have gone through all the practicals, you have observed few things about NAT. So we have normally three sections of NAT rules, where we get the NAT rules in NAT table. Okay, on firewall. The first we have section 1. So section 1 is for twice NAT. So whenever we are going to be configured twice NAT on firewall, so that is always visible inside your section 1. Okay, because if you remember, twice NAT can translate source and destination address with a single NAT role, okay, with a same NAT role, you can say. Okay, and after that we have section 2. So section 2 is specific for your network object. Network object also known as AutoNet, okay, that we are discussing now. What is AutoNet? So AutoNet means the ordering is automatically, and how, let me explain it in detail, but let me tell you the third one is after AutoNet, something like this. Yeah, after AutoNet, that we will discuss, and the at the end of the net, entire net section. Okay, so right now we have three type of sections. So we have configured object network with static, dynamic, and PAT, right, with multiple variations. So you can see the section 2 is available in our configuration, and the ordering is remain like this. If you configure all type of NAT on firewall, so which NAT rule is going to be checked first on firewall? So section 1 NAT rules are going to be checked first, then section 2 NAT rules are going to be checked, and then your section 3. Okay, so this is the ordering, but till now we only discussed about network objects. So now I'm coming with network object, guys. So network object have criteria to select every net rule, to select every net rule. And what is that criteria, guys? So I'm talking about particularly section 2 now. Okay, so in section 2 the net is auto net. That means it's automatically decided by the firewall which rule is going to be checked first, which rule is going to be checked second. So firewall first of all going to be check static net, which static net you have configured, right? So under the static net there can be several rules. Okay, so the first of all, this is going to be check the pool size of real IP, pool size of real IP addresses. That means what is the size of the pool. So it's always choose the lowest pool to the highest pool on firewall. What is the meaning of lowest to higher? So that means like I have three NAT rule. One NAT rule have like this IP address. Okay. Second NAT rule have this IP address, the single IP. Third have entire subnet, right? So now what is the first rule that is going to be checked by the firewall? So we have three pools. The first pool have entire subnet, and two pools have just a single IP address. So these single IP address also part of the pool, right? So now in static net firewall check, I will choose the lowest pool first. Which pool, guys? Lowest pool. So we have these two are the lowest pool now. Okay, so in these two lowest pool it will check the lowest IP if pool size is same. Okay, and the IP is different, so this is the lowest IP and this is the highest IP. So this is going to be checked first, this IP, and then it's going to be check the real IP address with this port, and then firewall is going to be check the largest port. So this is the ordering. So it's check the pool size first. Okay, and after pool size, if they have multiple size of the pool, so let me write like this: single IP, and okay, let me make it like this in order, dot 0 slash 25. Okay, so now we have three pools: a single IP, a medium pool, and the largest pool. So this is example of the pool of the real IP. I'm not talking about the other IP subnet. Okay, so let make it real like this. Okay, so the smallest IP, the middle network, and the largest one. Okay, now the next what I can say, if the pool have same size, if real pool has same size means if both are the same size pool, like both are can be the single IP like this. Okay, and or it can be like this. So in that case, it's always going to be check the lowest IP address. It's going to be check the lowest number of IP, lowest number. Okay, the lowest, yeah, lowest number you can say. Okay, number of IP. So that means if we have two IPs with a pool of single IP, so it's going to be check the lowest one. Then it's going to be check the highest one in the ordering, because this is the lowest number and this is the highest number, right? So that how firewall is going to be check. Okay. Now, in third case, if IP address is same, maybe you are using the same real IP with two different pools. Okay, if real IP address is same, maybe I'm using this same IP address with two different pool. So now it's going to be check the alphabet order. It's going to be check the alphabetical order like A to Z. Okay, and after that 0 to n number according to that. So that is the ordering. So it's going to be check the alphabetical first, a b c d e f like this. Okay, and if you have any number with that, that is going to be with 0 to n number. That how they are going to be check. Okay, in the case of real. And after that they are going to be check the dynamic entries. They are going to be check dynamic net. Okay, so if you have stat in section 2, if you have static net have multiple variations, those are going to be set here, and then they will check the dynamic net. Okay, if this is clear, I will just create some examples for you and we will see the entries in the net table. So I guess we have already some here. Show net, so you can check and show a net. Okay, let me, okay, wait, note the net. Show net, show run, object network. Okay, see, so the first is here auto net, so that is automatically ordering. So the ordering is done to the DMZ net first, right? That is part of section 2. So DMZ rule is above. If you check DMZ rule is your DMZ1. So this is DMZ1, and the DMZ1 is using the single IP pool, right? Okay, and after that we have inside to outside, that is the LAN one. So LAN one have the bigger pool if you check, right? So I'm going to create one more rule. Suppose object network T7. This time I'm giving here host 3. Okay, and I'm going to translate with the like same DMZ and outside. Okay, and static into same IP like this. Okay, so now check show net and show run object network. See, so I configured this rule here T7, right? But T7 rule is available at the first now. Why? Because T7 have the lowest IP, and then DMZ have the highest IP, this one, right? And then the last one is your LAN, which have the bigger pool, right? So that how they consider it. But if I'm going to configure for the same one, okay, with a different IP, so we will check that also. Object network, I'm giving T8 this time. Okay, so the host is still suppose 3.3, and net rule DMZ2 outside and static. Right now I'm giving a separate IPs like this. Okay, so now you can check show net, show run object network. See, now we have here T7 at the top. Why T7? Because this real host is using same IP and T8 also using the same IP. But what is the difference between them? The alphabetic ordering. So this is T7 and this is T8. So the alphabet is T on both, which is same, but the number is lowest here, T7, and here is the highest, T8. So that is the first choice, that is the second choice. So you can check, this is the first choice here and this is the second choice. So this is the ordering of the net in AutoNet panel. I hope this is clear to everyone. Guys, okay. So if you have any doubt, please let me know. Vicky, Vikas, Siva, Sahir, Kenel, Daniel.
Yeah, Prof, I'll get back to you. Let me go through it again. Don't worry.
Okay, okay, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So just
Thank you, too.
we finished here about object network. So tomorrow I'm starting with twice net. Okay. So in twice net we will see how to configure the twice net, the benefits of twice net, okay, the configuration approach. But net type still remains same, like static, dynamic, and PAT, okay. But the configuration type is different for us, because if you